Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick, and this is MSFS Flight Plans, a handcrafted, mouth-narrated, and nerd-researched destination for anyone looking for just one more reason to hop back in the sim and enjoy this vast and fascinating planet of ours. This is stop number 3 on our Rocking Out tour, where we have been checking out some of the largest chunks of exposed rock in the world. And today we are departing from Medellin, Colombia. And if you can't figure out why the name of that city is ringing a bell for you, I'll tell you why. You've heard of it in just a few minutes. But our rock today is called El Peñón de Guatape, which translates to the Rock of Gautape, and it's roughly 25 miles to our east, and I'll show you exactly where that is on the Google map before we get going. And you can see we're in the Grumman Goose today, one of my favorite planes in the sim, which can land on water, in case you couldn't tell by looking at it. And this rock is on a huge man-made reservoir, so you know what that means. And this is the big Radials version of the Goose, by the way, which I think is far superior to the default version. And since this thing is old and fussy and takes a little work to get started up, we'll enjoy that experience together by going through the full startup procedure. And it had been a while since I'd flown this, and I was trying to go through the in-sim checklist and realized that there's a few important things that weren't entirely clear with that, so I had to go back and watch John Beckett's channel to figure out what I was missing. And I crashed the plane last time. I'll tell you about that in just a second. Okay, so we got those things fired up. Now we got to just look back behind us for just a second. Turn on the fuel cutoff valves and give this baby a couple pumps just to get our fuel pressure up. I really love that for some reason. And let's just open the door so our passengers can say hi. All right, so we're back up here in the front now, and we need to get these babies primed by just working the throttle a few times and leave it open just a crack. Make sure our prop is in the off position, or the lowest position. And then what we're going to do, if you don't already have this plane, is you got to hold down the starter for a second until these things turn over. And then once they do that, you introduce the fuel, and then it fires up. And because it sounds so awesome, let's go ahead and just open the windows. One of my favorite sounding planes in the sim. This thing is just unbelievable. Okay, you ready? Here we go. Do a little sim pit twister here and see if we can get her fired up. Oh, we got to turn the mags on. That'll be important. All right, let's do it. That's it. Take your time, baby. Take your time. There we go. And the left one. Listen to that thing. Amazing. All right, 2 good starts. Okay, it'll take a minute for this baby to get limbered up. Let's go ahead and check our barrow. And you can see we're starting at a pretty high altitude here, so keep that in mind if you're taking another plane. We're at over 5,000 feet, and we'll be getting up to about 9,000, maybe 9,500 on this during the course of this relatively short flight. And let's go ahead and set these things back to the auto-rich setting. It doesn't have like a positive stop, so we'll just kind of adjust it back there a little bit with the mixture. And let's look at our map real quick. All right, so let's zoom out a little bit so you can see where we are. Here's Central America up here in Panama City. We took a flight out there. Here's Colombia, the capital of Bogota. So we're a little bit to the northwest of that, right by Medellin. And here's the airport right here. So we're going to take off this way and then come up through the cities in a valley. It looks really, really cool. Come up this way, circle around the northern side of these mountains, come down this way by the town of Rio Negro. And this is their airport here. So we'll kind of skirt the eastern side of that. Come around Rio Negro, take a quick peek at that, and then come on into Guatape is the city that's close to it. This is the big reservoir, and the rock is right about here. And once we get out there, when I crash landed, I had to do it way out here, but we're going to try to come in a little bit closer to the rock, so I haven't done it yet. We'll see what it looks like out there and find a good spot to land once we're out there. Okay, so that's that. We checked that, and everything else I think is in pretty good shape. Barrow's already been checked. Everything's good. Okay, so let's go ahead and start taxiing this baby. Parking brake off. And I'll shut those windows once we get going so it'll be a little bit quieter. Go ahead and give it full props. And give it some throttle. And the turnoff is right over here, so I'll try to hit that. This is the live weather, and man, it can change fast out here. This is all rainforests, and it does rain a lot, so from 10 minutes to the next, it can change quite a bit. So hopefully we won't get anything that will obscure our scenery too much. All right, and we're taxiing. So the only payware that's available for this area is or any kind of freeware or payware. There's a payware airport for this place, but it was like $10, and since we're only going to see it for a second, I decided to not use that. The rock itself is an in-sim POI, and it looks just okay. The natural texture of the rock looks a little bit funny, but they did build some stuff up on it, which is true to life, so that's nice, because otherwise it would have just been a big hunk of rock. And the satellite imagery out here is kind of... Let me shut these windows. That's just too loud. Let's just shut these real quick. And be sure to lock it. We don't want that thing blown open while we're flying around. So when you look at the in-sim world map, you'll see that the satellite coverage is pretty spotty. And if you're not careful, you will see some very unrealistic looking stuff out here. And I think I've drawn this so that we hopefully won't see any of it until we get out by the lake. And unfortunately, most of the shorelines of the lake just don't look that great. So we'll check out our rock and then just come on down. But other than that, everything looks pretty cool. This is a nice little spot out here. The city looks pretty good. It's all default buildings and stuff, but we're going to be up high enough that it'll look pretty good. And they did a good job with the colorings of the roofs and all that, which helps a lot. So this runway is about 5,700 feet. And this used to be the main airport for this region out here. I'll tell you and show you where the current main airport is, which has a significantly longer runway. But I love these cities that are just built up into valleys like that, where parts of it are kind of sprawling up onto the mountains. Looks really cool. It's going to look neat once we get going too. And even though this plane doesn't have an autopilot console, autopilot will work. And you can do GPS nav too. So we're going to do that so I can focus more of our attention on looking out the window and telling you about everything. I am having a little bit of a problem. This flight plan, of course, will be included in the video description if you want to fly it just like we're flying it. But in this plane, once we get over Rio Negro, all of a sudden, no matter how I draw out the flight plan, it deviates and takes a hard turn in the wrong direction. So you might just want to be wary of that. You may need to wrestle control back and turn off the autopilot, which we will be doing if it does it again. But you can see the rock from a pretty good distance, so once we're out to a certain spot, it won't be too hard to find it again. And now we're getting a little rain, but it looks clear enough that hopefully we'll be able to still see everything pretty well. Alright, landing lights on. One notch of flaps. And I'd forgotten that this thing is a little bit hard to control on the ground. And I'm not going to lock our tail wheel because I usually find it's even harder to control once you do that. So what kind of wind are we dealing with? 2 knot crosswind, not bad at all down here on the ground, so we won't have any problems. Coming across from our left. So we may see the nose get pushed off to the left just a little bit. Okay, you guys ready? Let's do it. I just love that it takes this thing a little while to get itself up and going. It's like a grandfather you gotta coax off the couch. Yeah, I think we'll be alright. Hopefully all the rain and the clouds will stay off to the west here. Alright, baby, just stay close to the center. That's not too bad. Oh, here we go. Once it starts to get a little off course, keeping it corrected is not easy. But we're good enough to get up in the air now. Gears up. Look at that. Love these cities out here in South America, down in these valleys, and there's a lot of them out here. We've already seen several of them on this channel. And flaps up. And once we get to the end of the runway, we'll turn on the autopilot. And let's go ahead and set our altitude for 9,000 initially, because we're going to need that to clear that mountain once we come around the side of it. Alright, so nav on, vertical speed hold, and we're in good shape. Alright, so we'll climb at 1,000 feet a minute. That'll probably be just fine. And let's go ahead and get our RPMs pulled back some to 22, which is the upper range for that, 2,200. And our manifold pressure should be no more than 34.5 inches. Alright. And we're up. And we're off. You see, look at that. I mean, the default buildings, but, I mean, you can see the texture of the cars and everything. Pretty good job. I think the Middle East probably does the worst, with the exception of the 2 flights we've taken, as far as trying to make autogen stuff look real. Out here it looks pretty good. The river doesn't look too great, but other than that, it does look good. So Medellin is the capital of this lush mountain province called Antioquia. And they called it the City of Eternal Spring. That's the nickname of this town. Well, the city. It's a big city. Because it looks like this pretty much year-round. We're just 6 degrees north of the equator here, but because we're up at roughly 6,000 feet, It stays in the 70-degree range pretty much all year round. So it doesn't matter what time of year you come out here. You'll have about as much daylight and about the same kind of vegetation, about the same kind of weather, and about the same kind of temperature. This is the second largest city by population in Colombia, after the capital of Bogota, with about 4 million residents in the metro area down there. And they said in the downtown area, which, you know, it seems like the whole thing's kind of contained right here, there's about 2.5 million, so I guess in this whole sprawl area, but it's a lot more densely populated up there, you can see it. Evidence of the first human settlers in this part of the world may go back as far as 24,000 years ago, with the first Europeans being Spanish explorers, of course. And they probably worked their way out here, they think, around the 1540s. And in 1574, a guy named Gaspar de Rodas was granted 4 square miles of land for cattle grazing, making him the first permanent resident of the area. And once they established a mission out here to tame the savages, more people started to trickle in, and once they found gold to the north, things really took off. And though the town was still fairly primitive in terms of infrastructure, they founded the Royal College of the Franciscans out here in 1803, which eventually evolved into the University of Antioquia in 1901, which is still out here today. I'll show you where it is. And as the 20th century rolled around, the main industry went from gold mining to coffee growing, which is still a major export for the region, eventually being surpassed by cocaine, which brings us to why you might recognize the name of this city. Notorious cartel kingpin Pablo Escobar is from Medellin, and in the 1980s it was his main base of operation, making it at the time one of the most dangerous cities in the world. Okay, so this big thing right here is called Cerro de Volador, and I think it's just a big park nowadays. And this little thing right down here is the Botanical Garden, and here's where the original old Franciscan University was. So now this is called the University of Antioquia. And they got a big stadium out there, and because we're having to fly so high, it's going to be kind of hard to pick out anything else. But I just wanted to give you a nice little view of the city as we were coming around it. And now we're coming up on 9,000 feet, so we're going to stabilize here in just a minute. So this place had a lot of crime for a while, but all that changed since El Patron was felled by 3 bullet holes during a raid on his Medellin not-so-safe house in 1993. And since then, the homicide rate has declined by 95%. And extreme poverty has been reduced to, I think, 66% of what it was before, which is pretty dang impressive if you ask me. And Medellin is now considered safer than many U.S. cities we've already toured on this channel, namely Baltimore, St. Louis, and New Orleans, and Detroit, which we'll get around to eventually. So all 4 of those cities are more dangerous to live in than this place. Not back in the 90s, though. They do still have a couple of hot spots I was reading, but I read that 97% of the annual homicides are associated with just 3.2% of the street addresses in the city, which I have to imagine get plenty of attention from the over 7,000 law enforcement officers they have down there. And let's hop in the back real quick, because they built, starting in the 2000s, a big cable metro that's like a gondola. But I'm guessing, I think it would run right up here. There's 9 miles of gondolas, and the circuit looks kind of like a metro train would. And I think that's where it would be. I was hoping we'd be able to see with our gondola pack, but that thing just uses AI to figure out where they should be. And because some of them were built fairly recently, I don't think it caught them, because I think that's where it would be right there, where that naked spot is. Oh well. We've seen some other beautiful gondolas around. Look at that. Awesome. Alright, the weather looks like it's going to be friendly for us, so that's great. So over there to our right is a big place called Avery Park, and that is the termination of one of the gondolas that goes up there. And they're just little ones. It's not like a big ski resort or mountaintop Alp gondolas, but they run constantly. And I guess they probably figured that was cheaper than building trains throughout the city, so they're still building them. The last one was completed in 2021. And I think they're still planning on adding some more. I think the first one they opened was in 2004. And I'm not sure exactly where all those different lines are. So to our left, right down there, is yet another town called Copacabana. And you may recall we saw another one of those during one of our Bolivia flights, neither of which have anything to do with Barry Manilow. If you didn't see that flight, that song was about a nightclub in Manhattan, but he dreamt it up at a hotel in Rio de Janeiro, also called Copacabana, and that might be the next flight we take on this channel. Not necessarily see the hotel, but they got another big rock out there. All right, let's hop in the back again. I love when we're turning and we can look out that back window. Nope, got to get my pointer over on this side before I can do it. Scenery looks good, except where you can see down through the trees. You know, you get the photography, and obviously there would be trees there, so I don't know what causes them to make a break in the trees when there should be trees down there. But look at this stuff. Just looks great. Let's hop on the other side. Beautiful. So we're pretty high up here. I think the ground here is around 7,000 feet. Maybe even more than that, because we're flying at 9,000 now, and I don't feel like we're 2,000 feet above the ground, so it may be even higher than that. And that little town up there to our left is called Grumman. And according to Google, there's absolutely nothing to do down there. No museums, no amusement parks, no nothing. So I'm just telling you that that's what it is. I did find one little bit of history that I thought was kind of interesting about that place. Its first non-indigenous settlers were slaves. And I'm guessing they were freed slaves? I couldn't tell when they moved out there, but it seems odd they'd be trusted to just come out here and not take off. Maybe there wasn't anywhere else to go. Or maybe they were modern-day slaves, shackled to a fondness for nose candy. Certainly no shortage of that out here. All right, we're going to bear to the right a little bit as I carefully try to navigate around the blotchy spots, and I'll show you one of them just so you can see what they do look like when you see them. So that if you see them again, you'll know to steer around them. But it's going to be right at the end of the runway for Rio Negro up here, which is the next spot we're going to see. All right, so I'm looking for... So there's the runway. So we're going to come right around this way. Here's Rio Negro. So we're going to circle up around this side, and then we'll head over to our rock. And that's when I'm going to have to jettison the autopilot. This is really nice looking landscape. Even the default stuff looks really good for an area that got no love. So Rio Negro, as you're going to see, is not nearly as big as Medellin, but the airport, however, that one to the right there, their runway is over 11,000 feet. Again, that one we took off from is 5,700 feet. And I think they built this one because they wanted it to be a destination for international flights. Now at the place that we left from, it's just domestic flights. And I think there's also a military base that's using this one out here. But it's big. They said it's about a 30-minute drive if you want to cross the mountain to get into Medellin. So not too bad. And you can check out the park while you're up there. And ride the gondola down if you want to. That runway is actually the second longest in the whole country. I think the only one longer is probably down in Bogota. So that's long. And there's just one of them out there too. Okay, so see this patch right here? That's what it looks like when there's no satellite coverage. They just throw in what they think should be there. And then down on the end of the runway, which our manifold pressure gauges are in the way, there's another spot right there. But you can see I have very carefully drawn this out so as not to be too obvious. But I'm going to make you look at it anyway. Now do you appreciate how good everything else is? That's what happens. I mean, at least they got some houses out there, but obviously that looks a little bit different than everything else. And there's that other big spot right over there. So Rio Negro, and I don't know if you saw it on the Google map, it's just one word, but running through it is the two-word Rio Negro River, which means Black River in English. And that's the name of the waterway that cuts through the center of town. And I took a good look at that thing on the satellite map, and it turns out it's not really black. But I guess before they cut all the rainforest down, there were reports that some parts of it looked really dark because of all the shadows. And that place was founded around the same time as Medellin, but it was more of a backwater until fairly recently, seeing most of its growth in the late 20th century. And today, believe it or not, this little town is one of the richest in the country. And you can tell it's pretty nice from above on the satellite map. There isn't really anything that looks like a low-income area, and they've got some amusement parks and other attractions out here. None of which you can really see in the sim. And you see all these things here and over there? They grow a lot of flowers out here. You don't see that very often in the sim, unless you're in Holland. Remember all those tulips we saw out there? So I thought that was pretty cool. And you can tell they're still building a lot of stuff out here. They got some golf courses. Alright, so now we're taking the turn that I don't want to take. So I'm going to, once we kind of straighten out here, head over these mountains that are going to be just off to the right side of our nose, and that should get us close to our rock, and then once we crest the mountains, we will definitely see the rock. Very lush and green, though. And at the end, when we look at little NavMap, you'll see that they've got these things all over the place out here. All right, so a few quick announcements as we head over to the Rock. If you didn't see our last upload and you're curious about what I look like, I posted a very brief announcement that we were about to hit our 1-year anniversary. I'll give you a little slice of life story. All right, I'm turning the autopilot off now. I guess we can turn our landing lights off too. About what it's like, a day in the life of doing a sim channel for a year on YouTube. If you find that kind of stuff interesting, some helpful tidbits if you're thinking about starting a sim channel on YouTube. If you haven't joined our Discord server, the link for that will also be in the video description. Again, along with this flight plan and the file with all the bookmarks from all the flights we've ever taken. So if you use Little NavMap and you'd really like to see the things we're looking at on these flights, you can import that into Little NavMap. And I've also put a tutorial of how to do that in our how-to section. And that'll show you how to get those in there, which will make it a little bit easier to adjust the flight plan if you're wanting to take it slightly different than we are. There's some more of those covered areas that grow all the tulips, or whatever they're growing out here. Roses. Flowers of some kind. Coca. All right, before we get to the Rock, I'll tell you about this massive reservoir. In English, it would be called the Reservoir of the Rock. And they built it in 2 phases, with the first completed in 1972 and the second in 79. Well, I feel like we need to come up a little bit more here to clear that. I guess we're going to find out. And when they flooded this area, they had to relocate the whole town of El Peñol, which had been doing just fine since the 1600s. And the current location of that town is right along the southwestern shore of the reservoir. But I couldn't tell how many people they moved. They referred to it as a city, so probably was a lot of people. But it's not like the place now isn't a huge city. So it couldn't have been that many people. And that same Rio Negro, Black River running through that last town, is the river they dammed up. And this thing really swole up when they did it. It has a surface area of almost 30 square miles. And if you saw on the Google map, there aren't a whole lot of real long stretches to try to get this thing down. All right, there's the Rock right there, just peeking through the haze. That's it. So the stuff to see, the structures on the side of it, are on the northern side of it. So I'm going to do a big sweep around, and then we'll see everything there is to see, because when we're turning, this engine's going to come down. It's going to be hard to see it. So we'll see the stuff that there is to see as we come in for our approach here. And again, it's just a shame that there's such bad satellite coverage over this reservoir, because the pictures I saw of it in real life, it's beautiful. And from what I could gather, it sounds like a lot of folks come over from the city to indulge in all their water sport fantasies out here. And we will see some little boats puttering around here. There's another flower station. Alright, so we don't need to be too high. We'll just kind of come over the tops of these things. And the dam for this thing, by the way, is all the way up on the northern end of it, and it looks terrible. So you can save yourself the trip of going up there unless you like being disappointed. So last time I was flying this thing out here, my right engine went out, and I was trying to restart it up, and then it made that noise like it had blown up, which it did. So I had to turn up the power on my left engine, and then I blew that one out. But fortunately, I was going to check out the dam, so I was over the water at the time, and I was able to get it down. But the reason why is because I had not turned on... I thought I'd turned on both fuel tanks, but I'd only turned on the left one. So I don't know where the right one was pulling the fuel from, but it eventually sucked out whatever's in the tube, I guess, and it stopped working. And then the engines blew up, which was awesome. They were smoking and everything. If you're on Discord, I posted a screenshot of it. Oh, don't tell me we're going to come all the way out here and the Rock's going to be under a little cloud. Well, we'll be close enough to see it. And I feel like I should also mention that that Rio Negro that we saw is not the big one out here, which also starts in Colombia, but it starts further south. And that one is the longest tributary of the Amazon, at around 1,400 miles in length. I think this one's much shorter than that. I tried to trace it and follow it for a little while, and it looks like it kind of ends on the other side of this reservoir here. Wasn't much left of it, but I couldn't see where it started. Okay, so onto our Rock. Okay, it looks like we might be able to still see it. El Peñón de Guatape. This one is granitic in nature, and I probably don't need to define that one for you. Which sticks up about 650 feet from its base. And geologists think it's around 65 million years old, and the reason it looks like this is simply because it was slightly denser and more resistant to erosion than everything else that used to be around it. And it must be, because they probably get a heck of a lot of rain out here. And once we come around the other side of it, you're going to see a zigzag thing going up the side of it. Those are stairs for tourists who want to get a view from the top. And the buildings that are up on the top of it is a viewing tower, some platforms for selfies and photo ops, and a convenience store, which I have to imagine does a little bit of price gouging for beverages, especially after climb up all those stairs to get up there. And I didn't read about an elevator, but I'm sure they have one. You want to miss out on all the income from that water. Oh, we're going to get a couple more. Look at this. I didn't think about that because the original plan drew us out here so we wouldn't see that, but I had to turn the autopilot off. We got a few more of those up here. Okay, so I need to try to time this out pretty well. So maybe we could come down. That looks like a pretty good stretch right there. And if we're still too high for that, maybe we'll divert over to this one because that's really long. And if you want to come in this way, there's a really nice long stretch. That's where I crash landed before. But we'll shoot for this one right over here. So we'll start slowing down a little bit. Oh gosh, we're pretty high too. We're almost at 10,000 feet. So we need to slow way down. Let's just start coasting down a bit. And go ahead and give it full mixture again. Full props. So, you know, again, once you get close to it, you'll see that the texturing of this rock is not really good, especially compared to some of the other stuff that we've seen so far. But they did put the structures on it, which is great, I suppose. So you can see over here. So here's the town of Guatape right here. And I think that's kind of a resort touristy place now. But you can see all these white shorelines and stuff. I don't know if some clouds got modeled on there or what. The dam's right up here. You can't even tell it's a dam. If I didn't tell you, you wouldn't even know it. If you didn't know that's what it was on the map. It's not a real impressive dam anyway. Kind of hard to tell it is one in real life. Alright, so after this, I think I'm going to hit El Paso just to break this up a little bit. Then we'll probably hit Mount Rushmore. And I just watched there's a series on Prime. It's an older series called Make It Out Alive, I think. And there's a place in Italy where they had a massive dam overspill. It wasn't a collapse, but a part of the mountain behind it had an avalanche. Flooded the town, destroyed the landscape, and I thought we might want to go check that out. So maybe we'll cruise out there too. Then we'll hit Rushmore and Rio de Janeiro, and I think there might be one more. I've had a few requests for Ayers Rock, or whatever they call that thing now. Uluru. But the area around it just looks so bad. The rock looks okay, but everything around there looks really, really bad. So I don't know if we're going to do that or not. Plus, I'm sure all you guys have seen that. But if you're just dying to learn more about it, let me know. There's a little sailboat down there. I guess we'll have to avoid these guys as we're coming in, if there's any in our landing area. Alright, so here is the zigzag stairway going up to the top, and there's a shrine to the Virgin Mary about halfway up, which may be what this is. You better have one of those. You're in South America. And then, of course, there's haze and clouds right here. Let's just see how close we can get. Maybe we'll get a break. And they said that viewing tower up at the top is 3 stories high. Oh, we'll get a break. This will be good. That's it. Imagine climbing up those stairs. Ooh, well, we get a little rain. We're getting some of everything on this. All right, landing lights on. Let these boats know to get out of the way. This is actually okay because you can't tell how poorly rendered the rock itself is with that haze there. But look at that. Boy, that is a hike. Ugh. That makes me thirsty just looking at it. And they said there's some helicopter pads down there somewhere, but you can't select any of them on the sim. And I didn't see them, so I don't know exactly where those are. All right, obviously we're not going to make that spot right there, so we'll just come over to this spot right in front of us. And we got some boats down there anyway. We don't want to bother those guys. All right, 1 notch of flaps. Now we're probably at flap speed. We'll go 2 notches. Yep, see, look at this here. Not impressed. I don't think that's right. And then over here, all this white stuff. We'll see if 2024 has a little bit better coverage. This doesn't look anything like it, but it kind of reminds me of Lake Austin. I had a cousin that lived out there for a while, and everyone from the city would go out there with their boats and hang with their pontoon boats. Well, it sounds like I just lost an engine. I don't know what that noise means. Oh, I'm about to stall. That's what it means. The landing gear crunches on this. My stall light's not coming on, though. Everything's crunchy. Alright, there is a boat right there, so we'll try to avoid him. Boy, that's a weird noise for a pre-stall sound. That looks like a catamaran down there. I think it is. Hey, cat. Get your cameras out. Do a low flyby of the old Goose here. Oh man, this is one of those that's so flat you can't tell how close you are to the water. Please give me a little texture. Okay, we're getting some waves now. Power off. Yeah, that worked out pretty well. Pretty well. I wonder if that stall light's going to come on. There it is. All right, let's get our water helper out so we can steer if we need to. And there we go. Just turn that way a little bit. And we'll, of course, we'll throw out our fishing line. All right, so let's just kill the ignition. Cut the mixture. Pull the props back. And we'll get our fishing pole and our anchor out. Let's wait till we stop. I don't want to lose that anchor. That thing probably cost 15 bucks. All right, anchor out and fishing pole out. All right, let's see how it looks. Beautiful. Oh, and the rock in the background too. Well, that's probably going to be our screenshot at the end. Beautiful. For our thumbnail. Very good. Okay, let's look at little NavMap real quick. Not all that much else to see other than what we already saw. All right, centering off. So there's Medellin. And a few little spots to show you that we really couldn't pick out from when we were down there. But so there's our airport. Again, 5,700 feet. Not real long. Wait, that's 8,000 feet, not 5,700. Well, Wikipedia said it was 5,700, but that's not. That's 8,000. This one is longer, though. Yeah, that one's almost 12,000, so that one's much longer. All right, so we came around here, and the first spot was the El Castillo Museum. And this isn't an old castle. I think it's a more modern place. They just turned into a museum, but it's called the Museo El Castillo. They got a nice little garden out there. I couldn't spot it when we were flying over, but it may have been too far into the plane. And then here's Pablo Escobar's house. And I think that's where, and they made a museum out of it. I don't think that's where they killed him. I think that that's probably the place where his family was from, and I could not find the place where they shot him, but it's somewhere in Medellin. And then we came out here. They've got they got a lot of universities out here. There's one of them. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. And this place here is another little museum, a couple little mountains. That's a park there. And here's the other big one that I did point out to you, El Volador. There's another museum over there. Oh no, this is just a sports complex here, and then that's a university, and then here's where the original old one was, and here's the botanical garden. A lot of parks. Very nice. All right, so here are some of the cable lines that I could spot. So here's one of them, and that might be the longest one running up there. And I don't know if that was right or not, that spot that we saw that was a patch in the trees, but it looks like it's about in that vicinity. And then it runs over here across the city. You can see this little line if we really zoom in there. See that little, see Linea K? And then it runs over this way. And then they have some that run north and south too, but I couldn't really figure out exactly where those were. So I think this is kind of the central hub here. And I don't know where they run from there. It just got buried in the city. There's Copacabana up that way. And then we came around here to see the town that was founded by slaves. Whether or not they were free, we do not know. There's Guarne. And then I don't know what's up with that thing there. Big blank spot. And what's weird is there is satellite coverage here, at least in a little NavMap, but there wasn't in the sim. So this big spot right here is where all those default-looking fields were. But it looks okay here, and it looks okay on the Google Maps. So maybe the Bing map just had a cloud cover there or something. I don't know. And here's Rio Negro. And right down here is where their amusement park is. Let me see if I can find that thing. They got a big like tower ride. That may be like a viewing tower or something. Now I can't find it all. I'm not going to spend a lot of time looking for it. But they do have an amusement park down there. Got some golf courses over here and all these places that grow flowers. And there's the river right there. So it runs all the way up this way until it hits the reservoir. And you can tell it's not very black looking, is it? And the reservoir is way up here. We'll show you that in a minute. Well, let's just get to it. So here we are here. So there's the town that I guess was where they relocated everyone to, because the one that they flooded was called El Piñol too. But you can see it's not real huge and not much going on down there either. And it's heavily pixelated now. So whoever they moved, I don't know. I mean, it's decent size. They really got them packed in down there. And then the dam, if we can see it at all, here it is right here. So here's the dam. And if this cloud wasn't here on the Google map, you can see they got a tiny little spillway here. But it's not great looking, so not worth checking out. And you can see the little shorelines there look just great. I don't know what happened with the sim unless it was just this cloud cover that messed those up and made everything white looking. But here's the town of Guatape, which is, I think, more of a touristy place now. Yeah, they got some hotels and stuff down there. You know what? We didn't see too many docks, though, did we? And marinas. I'm thinking those probably should have been in there with our marina pack. But maybe there's limited coverage in South America. And then here's the rock. And you really can't see the staircase going up there, can you? Boy, you can't see... Oh, here's the structures over here. So this is just a weird angle. Okay, so the satellite must have been over here, taking the image from over here, because these things are in the center of the top. So it's kind of leaning this way here. And then here's, yeah, you can see the zigzag thing coming up there. It's a little bit blurry though. So that's it. That's the only one we've got in South America that I could find. So now we can say that we've seen it. And we got to see Medellin. That's cool. I'd never been out there before. Fun little flight. Looks really, really nice. Hope you take it. Hope you had a good time. I know I had an absolute blast, and I cannot wait to see you all again in the skies. Later.